Welcome to my journey through the Bible. This will be applications that we can apply to our life and a little more in depth about the chapter. We are in Exodus 22 1 through 31. Now, these laws did not cover every example that we would come up against, but it does give us guidelines on how to right the wrong. So we are to protect our nation, be organized, and focus the nation's attention on God. When we do something wrong, we need to go the extra mile in order to make it right. When you give back more than what you took, it makes it easier for someone to forgive you. Plus, it makes you think twice about taking something. Examples are if somebody borrows something from you and it takes them 3 months to give it back, you're going to start being a little irritated. You allowed somebody to borrow your lawnmower so they could mow their grass because theirs broke down. And it's near the end of summer before they give it back to you. Well, now you're frustrated because you haven't been able to mow your yard, you haven't been able to maintain your property, or if you are maintaining it, you are struggling and it's making your job a lot harder in order to help out a friend. Now, when that person brings you back your lawnmower, if they bring it back nice and clean and then say, man, I really appreciated this. I would have been having to pay somebody to do my yard. So they hand you $300 when they hand your lawnmower back. Guess what? You're probably going to be a little more softer with your answer, a little more willing to forgive them. And on the flip side of that, if you had to pay $300 for borrowing somebody's lawnmower as well as clean it before you give it back, you might not borrow it. You might just say, you know what, I'm going to take this money and get my lawnmower fixed. So when we look in details about things, we can see how it makes sense to make things a little bit easier for the situation or to just fix the things that we have. And of course, the other things just go without saying. If you're trespassing or you mess somebody else's stuff up or even allow your animals to mess it up, that you would be responsible for that. And God is very serious about his strong feelings against witchcraft and sorcery, because we are to only have one God. We are to only worship one God. And to do anything else means that we would be siding with Satan. God says that if you're not with him, you're against him. And that is made very clear all throughout the Bible. We will see statements similar to this, maybe not the exact words, but something very similar to it throughout the whole Bible. So a lot of times you got to pick a side. You got to decide, are you going to do good or evil? Or are you going to obey or disobey? Are you going to be a good citizen or a bad citizen? Are you going to worship God and only God? Or are you going to follow the lust and the desires of your heart that aren't necessarily good for you, but yet Satan will entice you and tempt you to go against what God says? And God also tells us that we are to be nice to strangers. It isn't easy to come to a new place, start a new job, go to a new school, go to a new church. And we should be friendly and be nice and try to help where we can and make somebody feel welcomed. If the shoe was on the other foot, we would want people to do that for us. You go into a new place, you feel a little uneasy, you're not sure what to say or who to talk to, and if somebody comes up to you and just starts talking, that breaks the ice. It makes things easier. You feel a little more welcomed. And so that's what we need to do for people that are strangers and that are new in our communities and our environment, our churches. The widows and the fatherless become poor because they have lost a source of their income. While this is true back then, it's also true today. When you have one person that has to shoulder the family and all the bills and all the schedules and all the responsibilities, that's extremely hard. And it definitely is going to hit them financially, because in today's world, we need two incomes to try to make ends meet. And if we're not having two incomes, a lot of times we're in poverty, or what society would say poverty is. So we should be understanding and try to help where and when we are able. Now, the fatherless did not choose to lose a parent, so we need to have compassion on them. We need to be a friend, try to take on that role of a parent a little bit when we come in contact with them, whether it's at church or at school or maybe just your neighbor. To help out a child or a widow is to go above and beyond, and God will bless you for that. You can give them good advice. You can buy them a Coke or a candy bar, take over a pie and sit with the elderly person and just talk with them. They will enjoy it and they will appreciate that so much. And if somebody gave you their cloak, this was something that they used to keep warm. They used it to put all of their belongings in, to carry it. They used it to spread it out, to sit on. They would even use it to pay for a debt, or until they got money to pay the debt back. And God says you're to give it back to them before night falls. Because if it's on a cold night, they need that. They use that as cover. Today, if somebody that is poor and has very little gives you something, God says, give it back to them. Be willing to forgive and forget. Don't hold it against them. And I will tell you that my husband and I made a decision a very long time ago that when somebody asked for money to pay their bill or to buy groceries or because their water was going to be shut off, we decided that if we decided to lend that money, we were going to give it to them with the expectations that we would never get it back. This way we could never bring it up to them. We could not hold grudges. We would not be angry with that person. That if we decided to give it and we looked at our finances and decided we could do it without putting ourselves in debt or hurting ourselves, then we would freely give it. If they paid it back, great and fine. But if they didn't, then that was as well okay as well, because we were not expecting it. And then this works out so much better for your friendships and your neighbors and the acquaintances that you're coming in contact with. The same thing could be said when it comes to people's animals and your property and other things, that you just try to have that godly attitude. Try to be understanding and saying, yeah, I understand. My dogs have gotten out of my yard, out of my house, out of our property before, and I've been guilty of them destroying something, and I have to be responsible for it. And I can be a little more compassionate, a little more generous when somebody else's animal comes to our yard. And many times I have. If an animal comes to our yard, a dog usually, I will feed it. I usually try to look at a tag. I'll try to check with my neighbors, see if they're missing an animal, or even if I've seen the animal in somebody else's yard, then I take it back to their yard because I know where it belongs. And there's no need in causing a big fuss or conflict over something. Just try to be a peacemaker and move on. Sometimes I realize that this can be hard when it comes to property lines and people fight over fences, and whether somebody tears down your fence or cuts it down or destroys it, it can be a little irritating. And those are the things that I think we have to give to God. And sometimes you may take that to court, and then you have to honor whatever the judge says. But then you also have to know that anytime you go to court, you're going to be paying the lawyer a lot of money. You're going to be paying a court cost, and then you're still out of money. You still have to refix your fence. You still have to figure out how you're going to handle the conflict between you and your neighbor and to where actually the property line is. Most of the time, if you had surveys done, that should stand up in any court or even with the law to say, hey, here's the proof of where this is, and try to work it out on your own before you go to court. But I understand sometimes maybe it's inevitable that that's where you end up is in court, and then you end up spending lots of money trying to gain this small piece of land. And then we are to pray. We are to pray for our government and our rulers because they just need prayer. It's a hard job to run the country. It's a hard job to run your town, to run a church, depending on what levels you want to look at this. But we need to pray for those that are in authority, and we need to pray that God would give them strength and that God would prick their heart and help them to make the right decisions and the best decisions for everybody and not just for themselves. Also, we are to give God back the first of everything that we have. So we have to realize that God gave us our home, our job, our family, our friends, all the things we have, our vehicles. If you're lucky enough to have the little extra perks as a boat and campers, I mean, they still came from God, whether you bought them brand new off the lot or you bought them used from somebody that was getting rid of it. Those are all gifts from God. And we need to give back to God just a little bit. We need to put for God first and foremost. We need to pray to Him. We need to study first thing in the morning, give Him the first of our time, give Him the first of our talents and creativities. We need to put God on the top of our list. When you make out your bills, you get paid and you say, okay, these are the bills we have to pay. I have to pay my lights and my water and my electric, and you might have car payments and house payments. And somewhere in there, you need to put God. And God should be at the top of the list. A lot of times we give to God what's left. Oh, I paid all my bills. I have a few bucks. That's what I'm going to give to God. I've done my part. Well, that's not really doing your part. This is giving to God what you have left. What if God gave to you what was left after He had done bless so many other people? You might not have half the things you have. So we have to put God at the top of the list and put a dollar amount out there and say, God, and this is the amount that I am giving God. And let me tell you, I have been in that boat where I did not always give God my time first. And sometimes things would get chaotic and crazy, and I'm thinking, oh, my schedules are so mad and I'm having a hard time keeping up with them and I'm getting frustrated. And then I stop and realize, where did I put God in the picture? Where did God come into my plan for my day? Many times He didn't. Not until things went crazy, and then it's like, oh God, why is this going so wrong? Why is everybody getting on my nerves? Why are things not going smoothly? Why am I frustrated? And then God's saying, because you didn't start off talking to me. You ran out the door on your own and you left me where I was at. God says, take me with you and I'll give you peace. Take me with you. Spend time in my word and I will bring that back to you throughout the day. And it'll be able to utilize it and make your days go a little smoother. And your attitude, it changes your attitude, and that's what really counts. Your attitude about everything that's going on. Also, you can say God doesn't need your money, and you're absolutely right. He doesn't. God is so powerful. If he wanted to turn all the rocks into $100 bills, he could do that, because there's no limits to his power and to what he can do. But where God doesn't need your money, churches do. The churches need your money to be able to keep their lights on, to be able to pay for the water, to pay to keep the church up and repairs, to keep the grounds looking nice and playgrounds. They need your money to be able to help to do things in the community and to do outreach like missionary work and Operation Shoeboxes. God will bless what you give him. Even if you say, God, I only have $2. This is all I can do. God will bless that. Don't underestimate what the amount of dollars or the amount that you would give, because God can multiply that to 10, 20 times more than what you give. And it's not necessarily about the dollar amount as much as it is about your heart and your mind. The Bible tells us that where your heart is, where your treasure is, that's where your heart's going to be. So if you build your treasure on things here of the earth, that's where you're going to find your life. If you build your treasures in heaven, then that will be eternal. So while we have these guidelines, we have to see how they apply to our life and adjust our life accordingly. So may God be with you in everything and in every way.